Have you ever spoken in a meeting only to be completely ignored? Then watch someone else say the exact same thing and get praised for it? It's frustrating, right? Imagine sharing a brilliant idea only to see it overlooked until someone else repeats it. This common scenario highlights a deeper issue. In the next 8 minutes, you'll discover a psychological tool rooted in Carl Jung's work that changes how people perceive you. Learn the technique successful leaders use to command attention by speaking differently. It's about understanding hidden power dynamics in conversations that most people miss completely. The overlooked power of silence. What if your habit of filling every silence is actually making you invisible? Think about the last conversation you had where you rushed to speak, afraid the pause would make you seem unprepared. Most people operate this way, treating silence like an enemy to defeat rather than a tool to wield. Research shows 78% of professionals admit to speaking too quickly in meetings, terrified of those empty moments. Every time you jump in to fill the silence, you're surrendering power. Take Sarah, a project manager at a tech firm. For years, she couldn't understand why her ideas were overlooked in meetings. She prepared thoroughly, spoke clearly, yet colleagues would repeat her suggestions minutes later to applause. Before she changed her habit, Sarah often felt frustrated and undervalued, wondering why her contributions seemed invisible. The turning point came when she started waiting 2 full seconds before responding. Not dramatic pauses, just intentional space between thoughts. Within weeks, her team began leaning forward when she spoke, interrupting less, actually hearing her ideas the first time. This change made Sarah feel more respected and confident, as if her words finally carried the weight they deserved. This shift happens because of how our brains process silence. A University of Michigan study found that speakers who pause just half a second longer than average are rated as 30% more competent by listeners. In the context of meetings, this means that a well-timed pause can transform how your ideas are perceived. Another study in the Harvard Business Review showed that executives who use strategic pauses in negotiations achieved better outcomes 82% of the time. The data is clear. What feels like dead air to you registers as authority to others. Consider how nature works. Predators don't chase constantly. They alternate between motion and stillness. The pause before the strike is when they're most dangerous. Human communication follows the same principle. When you stop filling every gap, people subconsciously assign weight to your words. They start anticipating what you'll say next, rather than planning their response while you're still talking. Rapid speech signals anxiety, like a verbal tick revealing discomfort with the situation. Fast talkers are often perceived as trying to convince rather than communicate. Meanwhile, measured speakers appear to choose each word deliberately, suggesting deeper consideration behind their statements. The irony is that slowing down actually gives you more control, not less. Think about courtroom dramas. The most powerful moments aren't when lawyers rapid-fire objections, but when they let silence hang after a damning piece of evidence. That space forces the jury to sit with the implications. Everyday conversations work the same way. Your pause after being asked a question doesn't signal hesitation. It signals that the question deserves thoughtful consideration. The discomfort you feel with silence is exactly why it works. Your brain's threat detection system evolved to interpret prolonged silence as danger. Ancient humans needed constant sound cues to confirm safety. Modern offices trigger this same instinct. When conversation lulls, people rush to fill it, mistaking social silence for impending threat. But high-status individuals override this impulse. They understand that controlled silence isn't absence, but presence amplified. In meetings, this means that by embracing silence, you can command attention and respect. Just like a predator in the wild, your strategic pauses can make your words more impactful. So next time you're in a conversation, remember that silence is not your enemy. It's a powerful ally that can transform how others perceive you. By mastering the art of the pause, you can ensure that your voice is not only heard, but truly listened to. Jung's shadow and the unclaimed power in you. Let's look deeper into why silence holds such power. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow explains what's happening during those intentional pauses. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves we don't acknowledge, instincts and impulses we suppress. Discomfort with silence often stems from a fear of confronting these hidden aspects. When conversation stops, we're left alone with our thoughts, which can feel unsettling. Think about how photographs work. The negative space around a subject isn't empty. It defines the subject's shape and importance. Your pauses function the same way in conversation, creating the structure that gives your words meaning. Studies from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology show humans instinctively assign significance to silence. In one experiment, participants rated speakers who paused as more thoughtful and authoritative, even when the content remained identical. The researchers concluded that silence acts like a mirror, reflecting back whatever assumptions the listener brings to the interaction. Consider a scenario where a manager pauses during a meeting. The room fills with anticipation, and each team member projects their own expectations onto the silence. Someone who respects authority might see the pause as confidence, while a nervous colleague could interpret it as disapproval. This illustrates why the 2-second pause triggers dramatic shifts in perception. A University of Amsterdam study found that negotiators who used strategic silence made their counterparts 40% more likely to revise initial offers upward. The researchers noted that silence created psychological pressure to fill the conceptual vacuum. Your discomfort with pausing reveals more about you than you might realize. Jung believed we fear silence because it forces us to encounter aspects of ourselves we typically avoid. The executive who can't stop talking during presentations might be compensating for hidden self-doubt. The salesperson who rushes through pitches could be avoiding the vulnerability of genuine connection. These patterns form what psychologists call linguistic armor, verbal habits designed to protect our shadow elements from exposure. Consider how musicians use rests in composition. The silence between notes shapes rhythm and creates anticipation. Your conversation pauses work the same way, building tension and focusing attention. Stanford researchers analyzing courtroom transcripts found that witnesses who paused before answering were deemed 28% more credible by mock juries. The critical finding was that the speaker's anxiety about pausing often undermined their credibility more than the content of their testimony. This phenomenon appears across cultures. Anthropologists studying traditional Japanese business meetings observed that the most senior executives often spoke least. Their silence compelled others to project wisdom onto them. Similar patterns emerged in studies of high-stakes diplomatic negotiations. The side comfortable with longer silences typically gained more concessions. Contemporary neuroscience explains this through predictive coding theory. Our brains are prediction machines, and when you break conversational patterns with silence, you force others to pay closer attention to what comes next. The discomfort you feel when first practicing pauses isn't a sign you're doing it wrong. It's evidence you're touching the shadow. That tension is where real transformation happens. Therapists report that clients who learn to tolerate silence in sessions often experience breakthroughs in self-awareness and communication skills. A London Business School study tracking executives over 5 years found that those who mastered strategic silence received promotions at nearly twice the average rate. Their colleagues described them as composed under pressure and thoughtful decision-makers, qualities that emerged directly from their comfort with pauses. The 2-second rule that changes everything. Here's the 2-second rule that changes everything. It sounds simple: pause before responding, but executing it requires precision. When someone asks you a question, don't answer immediately. Wait 2 full seconds while maintaining steady eye contact. Then respond at half your normal speaking pace. This creates space for your words to land with impact. Most people struggle with this at first because it feels unnatural. We're conditioned to respond instantly. Fearing silence makes us appear uncertain. But neuroscience research from the University of California shows why this timing works. Brain scans reveal that when listeners encounter a pause before a speaker's response, their prefrontal cortex activates differently. This area, responsible for judgment and evaluation, becomes more engaged. Essentially, your silence triggers their brain to pay closer attention. Here's how to do it. First, when asked a question, make deliberate eye contact. Don't stare aggressively. Just maintain normal visual connection. Second, breathe in through your nose during those 2 seconds. This oxygenates your brain and prevents rushed responses. Third, begin speaking slowly, emphasizing key words. Research from the Journal of Nonverbal Behavior found that speakers who reduced their pace by just 15% were rated as 22% more persuasive. This method works because it leverages how human attention operates. Our brains are wired to notice breaks in patterns, and when you disrupt the expected rhythm of conversation, people subconsciously assign importance to what comes next. Consider Jason, a pharmaceutical sales rep, who applied this technique. Initially, he struggled with the pause, feeling awkward and unsure. He tracked his conversion rates before and after implementing the 2-second rule. Previously, he'd jump in with facts immediately when doctors questioned him. After training himself to pause, his close rate increased 40% in 3 months. The doctors started treating me like a peer rather than a salesman, he reported. They'd actually wait for me to finish my sentences. His story shows the power of persistence and adaptation. Most beginners make 2 critical mistakes. First, they miscount the timing. 2 seconds feels much longer than you think. Practice with a metronome app until you develop the rhythm. Second, they break the pause with filler words like or well, which defeats the purpose. A University of Texas study analyzing job interviews found that candidates who use silent pauses instead of filler words were 36% more likely to receive callbacks. Think of it like a painter leaving blank areas in a composition. Those empty spots guide the viewer's eye to what matters. Your pauses function the same way in conversation. They direct attention to your most important points. Linguistics research shows that listeners remember information following a pause 20% better than content delivered in continuous speech. You'll know you're doing it right when others start mirroring your pace. In negotiation training, this is called pace leading. When you slow down, the other person often unconsciously matches your tempo. FBI hostage negotiators use this principle. By controlling response timing, they guide agitated subjects toward calmer states. The same dynamic plays out in everyday conversations. Some contexts require slight adjustments. In fast-paced trading floors or emergency rooms, 2 seconds might be impractical. The rule adapts. Even half-second pauses create measurable differences. A Columbia Business School experiment found that shortening pauses to 1 second still boosted perceived competence by 18% in time-sensitive scenarios. The principle holds: any intentional pause outperforms rushed responses. Incorporating this technique into your communication toolkit can transform interactions. It's not just about pausing, it's about creating intentional space that enhances your message. By practicing and refining this skill, you can become a more effective and persuasive communicator. Why your brain fears silence. Your brain resists silence due to evolutionary wiring. Early humans relied on sounds to detect threats, so silence signaled potential danger. This ancient instinct still affects us today, making conversation gaps feel uncomfortable. Neuroscientists at University College London found that silence triggers the amygdala, causing stress responses. This explains why a 2-second pause feels unsettling. Your brain sees it as a warning. Modern life amplifies this instinct. We rarely experience true silence now, with constant phone notifications and media streams. A Duke University study found office workers face interruptions every 11 minutes. This constant stimulation has lowered our tolerance for quiet, making pauses feel unnatural. The dopamine system also plays a role. Research from MIT shows that rapid conversation triggers dopamine releases, rewarding us for continuous speech. Silence doesn't provide this chemical boost, so people rush to fill gaps, chasing the dopamine hit. Emergency responders train to overcome this instinct. Crisis negotiators practice comfortable silence, maintaining up to 45 seconds of quiet during high-stakes talks. The FBI's hostage negotiation manual states, "Silence is the negotiator's most powerful tool, yet the hardest to master." Trainees initially feel discomfort, but with practice, they learn to override the impulse. Their experience shows this response can be retrained. Functional MRI studies reveal what's happening in the brain during silence. In a University of Pennsylvania experiment, subjects practicing intentional pauses showed heightened activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, the conflict resolution area. But after 5 sessions, this response diminished. The brain began seeing silence as a tool, not a threat. This neural plasticity means anyone can adapt with practice. The key to rewiring this response lies in gradual exposure. Start with half-second pauses in low-stakes conversations. Notice how nothing negative happens when you wait before responding. As this becomes comfortable, extend to 1 second, then 2 seconds in professional settings. A Stanford study had participants follow this progression over 8 weeks. By the end, 89% reported pauses felt natural, and colleagues rated them as more composed and authoritative. This training effect shows up in brain scans. After 2 months of practice, MIT researchers found subjects' dopamine systems responded differently. Instead of activating only during rapid conversation, their brains began associating pauses with anticipation of higher quality communication. They developed a new reward pathway, valuing thoughtful responses over quick ones. This explains why master communicators don't rush to fill silence. Their brains find it rewarding. Consider how professional actors use pauses effectively. Drama coaches teach that the space between lines often carries more meaning than the words. British theatre director Peter Brook notes, "The strength of silence is that it's inexhaustible. It always means more than speech." Actors initially fear losing the audience's interest, but with practice, they learn that well-timed silence increases engagement. The same principle applies to everyday conversations. Your pauses become meaningful rather than empty. The discomfort curve follows a predictable pattern. Research from the University of Chicago's Communication Institute tracked 200 professionals learning strategic silence. In the first week, 94% reported anxiety about pausing. By week 3, this dropped to 65%. At the 2-month mark, only 12% still felt discomfort, while 88% found pauses natural and effective. Colleagues noticed the difference. 78% rated practitioners as more confident and competent by the study's end. This transformation happens because you're updating your brain's threat assessment system. Each successful pause shows that silence doesn't lead to negative outcomes. The anterior cingulate cortex stops flagging these moments as dangerous. A parallel process occurs in listeners' brains too. University of Amsterdam research shows that after repeated exposure to someone using strategic pauses, observers' brains begin valuing those silent moments as part of meaningful communication. Silence as your secret weapon. Consider 2 people negotiating a salary increase. The first candidate states their desired number and immediately justifies it with reasons and qualifications. The second states the same number and then sits quietly, maintaining comfortable eye contact. Research from the Harvard Negotiation Project shows the second approach succeeds 3 times more often. The impact of silence is striking, like an artist using negative space to enhance a painting. Most people undermine themselves by talking too much after making requests. A Columbia Business School study analyzed 500 salary negotiations and found that candidates who spoke continuously after stating their number received smaller increases on average. Those who paused for just 3 seconds got better terms 82% of the time. The researchers concluded that excessive explanation signals doubt, while silence communicates confidence in your value. FBI hostage negotiators use this principle in life or death situations. Their training manual states, "When you make your position clear, stop talking. The first person who speaks loses leverage." Former FBI negotiator Chris Voss explains, "Silence is the weapon we use most. It creates space for the other side to reveal what they really want." What actually happens in the other person's mind during these pauses? Neuroscience research from Stanford provides answers. When you pause after stating a position, the listener's brain automatically starts searching for reasons why your request might be reasonable. This is called confirmation bias in reverse. Instead of looking for flaws in your argument, they subconsciously look for reasons to agree. A 3-second pause triggers this mental process in 90% of people, according to brain scan studies. The effect intensifies in hierarchical situations. MIT's Sloan School of Management studied negotiations between junior and senior employees. When junior staff used strategic pauses, senior executives were 40% more likely to concede points. The researchers noted, silence temporarily equalizes power dynamics by removing verbal cues of status difference. This explains why the technique works particularly well when you're the less powerful party. In a discussion, real estate agents see this principle in action daily. A nationwide survey of 1,200 agents found that those who paused after stating an offer price closed deals at or near asking price 68% more often. Veteran agent Maria Chen explains, "When I stop talking after presenting an offer, buyers start convincing themselves. They fill the silence with reasons why the price makes sense." This psychological shift happens within seconds, yet most people never leverage it. Corporate recruiters report similar patterns. A LinkedIn survey of 850 hiring managers revealed that candidates who paused thoughtfully before answering difficult questions received higher ratings on executive presence. One recruiter noted, "The best candidates understand that some questions deserve consideration. Their silence shows they respect the importance of the discussion." This perception advantage persists even when the actual answers are comparable. The technique adapts well to virtual meetings, where silence feels even more pronounced. A University of Southern California study analyzed Zoom negotiations and found that participants who used brief video call silences achieved better outcomes than those in face-to-face meetings. The researchers suggested that digital silence carries more weight because people expect constant verbal confirmation that the connection remains active. Sales professionals see dramatic results when applying this method. Enterprise software company Oracle tracked their top 100 salespeople and found that those who implemented the 2-second pause rule closed deals 27% faster. Their prospects reported feeling less pressured and more considered in conversations. This contradicts the common sales training that emphasizes constant engagement and rapid responses. Legal professionals rely on this principle in courtrooms. A Yale Law School analysis of 1,000 courtroom exchanges showed that witnesses who paused before answering were deemed more credible by juries. Defense attorney James Reynolds notes, "When my client waits 2 seconds before answering the prosecutor, it looks like they're carefully considering the question rather than reciting prepared lines." This small timing difference can sway case outcomes. The technique works because it taps into fundamental human psychology. Princeton researcher Daniel Kahneman's work shows that people associate quick responses with superficial thinking, while pauses suggest depth. His studies found that interview subjects rated slower responders as more intelligent, even when their actual answers were identical to fast responders. This explains why strategic silence boosts perceived competence across professional settings. The confidence paradox. Most confidence advice tells you to project assurance through bold gestures and strong language. But here's a question. What if trying too hard to appear confident actually undermines your credibility? Think about job candidates who rehearse perfect answers yet still seem nervous, or managers who dominate conversations but fail to inspire trust. The missing piece isn't more confidence signals, it's the strategic use of silence to let confidence emerge naturally. Psychological studies reveal why forced confidence backfires. Princeton researchers analyzed hundreds of TED Talks and found an unexpected pattern. Speakers who paused frequently received higher ratings for authenticity and expertise, even when their content was less polished. Those who delivered rapid, flawless speeches were often perceived as rehearsed or insincere. The difference came down to processing fluency, how easily listeners could absorb and believe the message. Pauses created space for this mental absorption to happen. Consider two presenters discussing climate change. The first speaks continuously with perfect statistics and urgent tones. The second shares the same data but pauses after key points, allowing the numbers to sink in. University of Michigan research shows the second speaker will be remembered longer and trusted more. This effect persists even when audiences know nothing about the topic. The silent spaces between words signal that the speaker respects both the material and the listener's need to process it. This explains why traditional confidence techniques often fail. A Harvard study tracked MBA students practicing power poses before interviews. While their body language appeared more dominant, their verbal patterns remained rushed and uncertain. Interviewers consistently rated these candidates lower than peers who simply paused before answering. The researchers concluded, physical confidence signals work only when matched with verbal composure. Pausing bridges this gap by aligning your speech patterns with your body language. TED speaker Julian Treasure demonstrates this principle perfectly. His most viewed talk includes 32 intentional pauses, averaging 2.3 seconds each. Analysis shows these silences consistently occur before important statements, creating anticipation. Compare this to a less successful TED Talk, where the speaker averages only 0.7 seconds between sentences. Audience retention drops sharply after the first 5 minutes, despite equally compelling content. The difference lies in the rhythm. One allows ideas to breathe, the other overwhelms. Neuroscience helps explain why deliberate pacing builds trust. UCLA brain scans reveal that when speakers pause, listeners' brains activate mirror neurons, the same systems that help us empathize. This neural mirroring creates a subconscious connection absent in rapid speech. Another study at the University of Amsterdam found that pausing before answering personal questions increased perceived honesty by 27%. The silence signals you're considering the question seriously rather than offering canned responses. Sales training programs are catching on to this dynamic. Xerox revamped their sales training to emphasize strategic silence after their research showed top performers paused 50% longer than average. Their data revealed that prospects interrupted fast-talking salespeople 300% more often, derailing conversations. When reps implemented 2-second pauses before responding to objections, close rates improved by 19%. The pauses didn't change the pitch, they changed how the message was received. Job interviews show similar patterns. A LinkedIn study analyzed 10,000 interview recordings and found that candidates who paused before answering scored 22% higher on presence metrics. Hiring managers reported these candidates seemed more thoughtful and less rehearsed. One recruiter noted, "When someone takes time to consider my question, I assume they'll do the same with work problems." This perception advantage occurs even when the actual answers are similar to quicker responders. The military has used this principle for decades in high-stakes communication. West Point's leadership manual instructs officers to pause 3 beats before responding to challenging questions. This practice serves 2 purposes. It prevents reactive answers, and it demonstrates command presence. Retired General Stanley McChrystal explains, "In tense situations, the person who controls the tempo controls the room. Sometimes that means controlling your own impulse to speak." Medical professionals see the same effects in patient interactions. Johns Hopkins research found that doctors who paused after delivering difficult news were rated 40% more compassionate by patients. The study's lead author noted that brief silence allows the gravity of the information to land. Rushing to the next point makes it seem like you're avoiding the emotional weight. This principle applies equally to business leaders delivering tough messages or teachers explaining complex concepts. The confidence paradox becomes clear when examining political debates. University of Texas researchers analyzed every presidential debate since 1960. Candidates who averaged longer pauses consistently polled higher on leadership measures afterward, regardless of party affiliation. The study's most surprising finding: these candidates actually spoke less overall. Their power came from making each word count through strategic timing rather than sheer volume. Educational researchers see parallel effects in classrooms. Stanford's Graduate School of Education found that teachers who paused after asking questions got 50% more high-quality student responses. The 3-second wait time rule gives students space to formulate thoughtful answers instead of knee-jerk reactions. This same principle applies when you're the one answering. Your pause signals that the question deserves real consideration. Think about your next conversation. The real power comes from the spaces between your words. Tomorrow, try using the 2-second pause 3 times. Notice how people lean in, wait for your response, and treat your words differently. Research shows those who pause are seen as 30% more competent. As FBI negotiator Chris Voss said, "Silence is the weapon we use most. Start small. The discomfort will fade, replaced by quiet confidence. Over time, you'll see how controlling the tempo earns respect. Embrace this change and let the science of the pause transform your communication into a powerful tool. Respect isn't forced, it's invited. And silence, when used with intention, is often the most powerful invitation of all." If this shifted how you see yourself, or how others see you, imagine what else becomes possible when you slow down and speak with presence. Subscribe, and let's keep unraveling the unconscious together. Until then, remember, it's the space between your words that leaves the deepest impression. I'll see you in the next chapter of The Unchained Mind.